Now our next speaker will be Father Hans Zollner. I guess he's known to you all, Jesuit, theologian, psychologist. His work has been central in developing safeguarding frameworks within the Church. He's now the director of the Institute of Anthropology, Interdisciplinary Studies on Human Dignity and Care here at the Gregorian University. He's a founding member of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors, was in that commission from 2014 till 2023. And he has extensive engagement with victim survivors, is involved in academics and also working with safeguarding professionals. As such, he brings a comprehensive interdisciplinary perspective to safeguarding. Father Hans Zollner, the floor is yours.
Your Eminence, dear Cardinal Tagle, thank you for accepting our invitation. Representatives of embassies and governments, dear participants of ISC 2026, a warm welcome also from my side. Every year, this conference offers all of us who are part of a global safeguarding network the unique opportunity to collaborate, share, listen, and learn from one another's perspective. So many of you have traveled quite a distance to be with us here today. Thank you very much for making that effort in a time in which travel is very costly and difficult. A special thanks at this point from my side also to the IADC's team, especially Silvia Gaudiosi and Isabella Greco, who have put in countless hours and buckets of patience into organizing this event. May I have... Thanks to my colleagues on the organizing committee for all their hard work and participation in this year's conference. Tina Campbell, Simon Davis, Sisters Jane Y and Sister Jacinta Ondeng, as well as Alessandra Campo. Allow me also to mention at this point the presence of members of the board of ECCA, Ending Clergy Abuse, Gemma Hickey, Janet Aguti, Tim Law and Matthias Katsch are among us during these days. We are very glad that you are here, welcome you, and hope you can participate as much as possible in this conference over the course of the following days. There are more victims and survivors of different types of abuse among us, those who speak about it with others and those who don't. We acknowledge the presence of those who have been harmed by church representatives and others in different parts of the world. In the coming days, if anyone is experiencing difficulty processing a particular topic, please know that Sister Jessie, a psychologist, is here. She's available to meet with you and listen to you. Sister Jessie, I've seen her before. Where are you? Here. Sister Jessie is here. You can approach her or anybody from the team who will then direct you to Sister Jessie. Of course, we would not be here today without the generosity of our benefactors. Of particular note is the Hilton Foundation's generosity. And we are very grateful that Sister Jane Wakahio, Associate Vice President, Program Operations and Head of Global Sisters, together with Sister Hortensia, is here. Thank you and welcome. This year our topic is One Commitment, Many Contexts, Safeguarding Across Cultures. In order to understand how this topic came about, where it sits in the reality of communities, parishes, dioceses, congregations, the Catholic Church and beyond it. And what this conference could offer us, it's good first to know a bit of the conference history. Then secondly, to put the topic in perspective to safeguarding as understood today. And thirdly, to reflect on its intentions. History first. How did this type of conference come about? A bit like much of the history of the Catholic Church, its origins are shrouded in mystery. We know about a conference in Chicago in 1991, another one in Ireland in 1995. In 2001, it took place in Rome, and participants were only bishops. It's important to note that at the beginning, it was an initiative of 5 episcopal conferences: Australia, England and Wales, Ireland, Scotland, and the US, the so-called Big Five. Equally noteworthy, it was known as the Anglophone Conference, no further qualification. Presumably not only because of the reference to the main language in these countries, but also to avoid creating too much public attention and too much ecclesial disturbance. In the last 16 years, the conference has taken place in Rome, with the exception of 2020, the year of the pandemic, when we had to take a break and had an online meeting. In 2015, for the first time, the conference was housed here at the Greg. Then the about 60 participants came together in the Doctoral Defenses Hall. By the way, it was the first international conference I'm aware of on theology in the face of abuse. From 2016, as Tina has already pointed out, we began using the term Anglophone Safeguarding Conference. During the Child Protection Summit, which Pope Francis convened in 2019, the president of the Irish Bishops' Conference approached me, also in the name of the presidents of the other 4 big ones, with a message that those episcopal conferences intended to withdraw from the pattern that had been established in previous years. That is, each year one of the 5 big ones would co-organize the conference with the CCP, Center for Child Protection, now the IADC, and a smaller, less experienced episcopal conference. Why is this important to know for us at the beginning of this year's conference? Because the evolving name, nature, and numbers show something about the development in the Catholic Church and beyond. Safeguarding has become an issue in many countries and local churches worldwide, way beyond the Big Five. It involves the whole people of God, not only the bishops. And all those who feel invited and encouraged to share this commitment, even if they aren't members of the Catholic Church or of any faith community. The sheer presence of 300 participants, not 60, from 69 countries, not 5, demonstrates something has substantially changed and is changing. And we are all part and promoters of this. So, first, it was high time to consciously acknowledge that the composition and thrust of this conference has changed considerably. It has become more international, intercultural, and interactive. Secondly, putting the topic in perspective of safeguarding as understood today. The vision and horizon have broadened from child protection and prevention of sexual abuse of minors to safeguarding minors and adults in situations of vulnerability. which leads to sexual, physical, psychological, verbal, emotional, spiritual abuse, all expressions of abuse of power. Safeguarding, defined as the co-creation of safer space, safer procedures, safer structures, and safer relationships, necessarily implies inculturation. The Cardinal has spoken eloquently about what culture is and how it shapes each one of us. So there is no one-size-fits-all approach. When Simon Davies and I visited East Timor 2 years ago, we arrived in the aftermath of an auditing visit by one charitable European agency. The purpose was to measure the institution's commitment to safeguarding that received funding. I think it's fair to say that we got the brunt of the feelings and reactions of the previous visit. The auditor had applied the European definition of standards, criteria, and scales for measurement, and of course, receiving further funding rested on the auditor's green light. Many people in East Timor who we met, whose understanding of and engagement with safeguarding was evident, were very angry and dissatisfied. They experienced the auditor's visit as a sort of paternalistic, neo-colonial approach, very similar to the forced adoption of foreign ways of life and relationships described in previous tough chapters of the history of East Timor. I could tell many more such stories that I've heard in and from other countries. Mind you, this is not to promote relativism in the fight against abuse and for safeguarding in church and society. However, it has become very clear that the method of copy and paste from Western concepts, laws, and procedures into other cultures and contexts is, at best, an ineffective tick-off exercise, at worst, a consciously used excuse to find a way for continuing with abuse matters as before. The Cardinal spoke about language. Cultural awareness starts with language. One of the most emblematic discoveries for me in this regard was when we prepared the program for Pope Francis' summit in 2019. The 3 days topics had been established in English with responsibility, accountability, transparency. Now, when it came to translate accountability into the other 3 languages of the summit, Spanish, French, and Italian, it emerged that there is no noun in any of the Romance languages that translates one-on-one the concept of accountability. You can describe what you mean by accountability in those Romance languages in which most Catholics live and communicate. But you need a full sentence for that. Now, if you don't have a word for accountability in your own language, what follows? You don't think and talk about it, and presumably you don't know what it looks like in practice. Simply insisting on the specific meaning of accountability as in Anglo-Saxon or Germanic cultures and languages or in common law societies won't do the trick in other parts of the world. How do you translate accountability in Kikuyu or in any of the languages of Papua New Guinea I think there are 1,300 languages on that island alone. Instead of either trying to enforce something foreign or to give up on it altogether, could there be a third way? That is, finding out how accountability can be found in practices, symbols, narratives, customs of this particular culture and context? The same holds for other concepts relevant for safeguarding that we constantly use in our own languages and in our own understanding, presupposing that everybody else has the same understanding as we have. A few examples. Sexuality. How is sexuality talked about in India? Homosexuality. Recently, a bishop from Africa told me that he discovered that homosexuality has become an issue in some seminaries in his country in Africa. While a few years ago, not so long ago, we heard very important church representatives from Africa saying that there is no homosexuality in Africa. It doesn't exist. How do we define power and authority in our context? Relationships. The space that was mentioned already. Closeness and distance. How we greet each other. Touch. And also, following the Cardinal's remarks, the tension between the individual and the expert approaches to safeguarding and the communal, the community approach. There is a lot to discover here for all sides. Again, there are common general standards, but how they are spelled, seen, applied, and lived out is very different from one country to another, and quite often even within the very same country itself. Yes, safeguarding in the Catholic Church has become a more openly discussed and urgent issue, as I've witnessed over the past 2 weeks in some big places like India and Africa, where I had been invited to work with women religious. The way how the communication went, the awareness, the knowledge, and the impetus to do something and to change is very different to 5 years ago. The longing for formation and education is evident, and most of all, the need for platforms in which the concerns of and for victims of abuse can be voiced, where effective networks can be formed, and where the necessary work of cultural translation, much more than simply linguistic translation, and contextual rooting can take place. Even in situations of civil war, natural catastrophes, extreme injustice and poverty, religious terrorism, widespread corruption of the justice system, the lack of financial resources, and so forth. Which brings me to my third and final point. What are the intentions of ISC 2026? I propose 3. Being more grounded, getting more connected, feeling strengthened and encouraged. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, neither for guidelines, nor for educational efforts, nor for political and ecclesial strategies. Yes, there is common ground, the dignity and the respect for persons, for Catholics, the professed faith, the Eucharist, the gospel. But even the way we imagine God and trust God, the way we pray, the way we celebrate liturgy is different, as we have seen at the beginning in the prayer and what we witnessed last week in Dar es Salaam at the conference convening. for religious women from 23 countries. When the choir starts to move, the chant to clap, the whole assembly remains captivated. That is different in India, in Switzerland, and in Canada. So on one hand, this conference can provide a lot. Meet people, get a glimpse of their cultures and contexts, understand a little bit more where I myself come from, how I have been formed by the language, customs, politics, social circumstances, symbols of my culture. Accept more that my view of the world, of relationships, space, procedure, structures, my understanding of safeguarding has its right in its own, but that there are others seemingly coinciding or overlapping, or perhaps very diverse from mine. Anglos have an advantage here, not only in language. In this conference we hear many different accents and levels of English, but also in experience. In the Anglo-Saxon world, 45, 50 years of having to deal with the abuse crisis. That's a plus because of long-term learning and experience. But it's also a challenge, as one might believe that my and our way is the solution for all. That's why we will spend much time in the groups so that we enter into a listening process, in line with what Pope Francis called a synodal process, and start to realize what I need to let go of my own perceptions and convictions, and what stands the test of reasonable criticism and challenge. Disagreeing in a respectful way, even leading difficult conversations, creates deeper unity than either love bombing, we are all okay, or completely ignoring and disparaging other positions. Therefore, for me, the most important output of this conference cannot be that we return home with a provided handbook on how to make safeguarding interculturally sensitive and effective. I truly believe that contradicts the very idea why we are here, creating a handbook for each one the same. It contradicts why we engage in a process dynamic and why we need to be more aware that what we do here in terms of safeguarding and at homes needs sustainable, critical reflection and continuous learning and adjustment. I do hope we get informed and ground ourselves through reflection and discussion, that we are better connected, and we feel strengthened and encouraged at the end of these 3 days to work on a long-range outcome. That is, to continue writing our safeguarding handbooks for ourselves and for our communities. We, each one here, needs to write that. How do we enter into a continuous process of interculturally sensitive and effective safeguarding? Let's get to work. Thank you.